everyone! Welcome to the third episode of my Stretch Your Stamps scrapbooking video series. This month, I am so excited to be joined by my crafty friends Andrea Lake, Diane Williams, also known as Dearly D on her social media sites, and Jacqie Malzahn, and today we're going to be sharing our favorite ways to use alphabet stamps. Before I get started with this month's video, I just wanted to share some of the Instagram posts that you guys shared within the last month using the hashtag SYS scrapbooking. Ronalia Matroni was one of my guest contributors for last month's videos featuring floral stamps, and she created two spreads. So the first one was featuring the Harry Bradford Coming Up Roses stamp set, and I love how she gold embossed these and stamped the solid stamps in the florals to create all of these bright and colorful embellishments for her page. Her second layout features some floral stamps from Ali Edwards, and I love how she layered these up to create some layered embellishments for her page. Sabrina Poole, aka Mrs. Scrap and Plan, was my second guest contributor for last month, and she also shared two spreads that she made using floral stamps. This first one features some floral elements from crafty Jen Shao, and she did some messy stamping which created this cool artistic effect. This second layout from Sabrina also features a stamp set from Ali Edwards, and here I love how she created this border of floral embellishments with her stamps. Heba Elsabai, aka My Little Journal, shared this wonderful spread in her traveler's notebook featuring some floral stamps from Altenew, and I love how she used the bright blues to contrast with the black and whites in the rest of her spread. She also has a ton of other ideas in that process video, so make sure you go check that out. For my contributions last month, I shared this spread featuring some stamp sets from Altenew to show how I like to use layered floral stamps to create embellishments around a window. And I also shared this layout featuring Carrie Bradford's floral stamp sets, and in this layout I used some heat embossing to white emboss on some vellum to create some embellishments as well as a pocket for my page. If you missed any of those videos from last month, I do have all of our Stretch Your Stamps scrapbooking videos in a playlist so that they're easier to find, and I will include a link to that in the description box below. Last but not least, Sabrina shared two more spreads she created during the month featuring stamps. I love how she used some of these floral stamps from Ali Edwards to create a filler card for this page, and in her next layout, I love how she layered a bunch of speech bubbles from Ali Edwards to create this fun graphic effect. Just a reminder that if you're sharing some layouts inspired by our stamping videos, make sure to use the hashtag SYS scrapbooking on Instagram, and I'll pick out a few to feature in next month's video. Moving on to this month's video, I'm going to be sharing a few different ways for how I like to use alphabet stamps. I'm going to be using a lot of different stamp sets from a variety of different companies to demonstrate how I like to layer and combine different fonts together. And I'm going to be making two spreads in my Life Crafted album, one featuring some alphabet stamp sets from Ali Edwards and another featuring some alphabet stamp sets from Citrus Twist Kits. And Andrea, Diane, and Jacqie will each have their own videos sharing how they like to use alphabet stamps, so make sure to check those out after this video. Diane has actually created two videos for us, the first one being a process video and the second one featuring some other ideas for using alphabet stamps, so make sure to check out both of those as well. First off, let's take a look through all of the alphabet stamp sets that I have, and there are a lot. For the purposes of this video, I've divided my alphabet stamps into 4 different categories: serif fonts, sans serif fonts, outline alphabets, and unique stylized fonts. So serif fonts are the ones where you have these little extra strokes at the end of your lines, and sans serif fonts are the ones where you don't have those extra strokes. And this will be important later on when I'm talking about layering and combining different alphabets together. So you'll see that the first pile I went through were all serif fonts, and this next pile is going to be all sans serif fonts. By paying attention to whether your alphabets are serif versus sans serif, and the sizes of your alphabets, as well as the weight of your alphabets, which is like if they're bolded versus not bolded, you'll be able to notice some similarities and some differences between all of your different stamp sets, which will play an important role into when we start combining and layering these stamps together. And of course, you definitely don't need this many alphabet stamp sets. Some of these are from my card making days, some of them are from being on Citrus Twist Kit's design team, and in general, I do like to hoard stamp sets. If you're just starting out with collecting some alphabet stamp sets, I'd recommend starting out with a couple of basic fonts, maybe one in serif and one in sans serif, and maybe add like a unique stylized font that you really like. It might be helpful as well to go through your layouts to see what types of journaling cards you like to use best, and pay attention to what size or style of font might be consistent amongst your favorite journaling cards. For the first layout that I'm working on, I'm going to be sharing two different techniques with alphabet stamps. The first is a simple way to stack different fonts, and the second is how to fill up a shape using alphabet stamps. I'm starting off with two pages that are cut to the same size as a Life Crafted album page protector. One of these pages is just white cardstock, and the other is one of the pattern papers from Ali Edwards' Hearts Scrapbooking Kit. I also have a photo and some more pattern paper that I've cut down to 3 inches by 4.5 inches, and a journaling card that measures 3 inches by 4.25 inches. And I've made sure to leave that top 1/4 inch blank at the very top of the journaling card. I'm going to score the top of this journaling card at that 1/4 inch, and that's going to create a little hinge that I can then sandwich between the photo and the pattern paper so that when you flip up this photo, that reveals the journaling underneath. As usual for any interactive elements that I do, I'm using my 3/8 inch score tape on the two sides of the hinge to make sure that it's secure, and I'm using my Tombow Mono permanent adhesive tape runner to attach the rest of this photo down to that pattern paper. Next, I'm just using my We Are Memory Keepers corner chopper to make this top flap into a tag shape. And I'm going to be using my We Are Memory Keepers Crocodile to punch a hole in the middle of this tag so that I can put some twine through it later on. Before I do that, I'm going to be using these two alphabet stamp sets from Ali Edwards to stamp out my title, which is going to be Love This About You. I'm going to be using my Gina K Black Amalgam ink, which is my favorite black ink for stamping on just normal paper or cardstock. So my plan is to stamp the word You with the larger alphabet, and the words Love This About with the smaller alphabet above that. And this is going to be the most basic way to combine two different fonts, which is to combine a larger and a smaller version of the same font in the same title. And that might seem very straightforward, but we'll be building more on the idea of contrasting fonts later on in this video. Here I'm just tying in my twine, and I'm cutting it just long enough so that it drapes a bit over my title to fill up some of that empty space in between the photo and my title. And next, I'm adhering the bottom of my journaling card down onto my base page. After that, I'm moving on to the left side of my page. I really liked the colors of this Love pattern paper from Ali Edwards' Heart Scrapbooking Kit, so I picked out some dye inks from Altenew that I thought would be a bit similar. These are Pink Diamond, Sunkissed, Mango Smoothie, and Iceberg. The orange ended up a bit too bright for my liking. I would have preferred a bit more of a pastel orange, but I thought the other colors were a close enough match. I also used my Brother Scanning Cut machine to cut one of the digital heart shapes out of some white cardstock, and I'm going to be using this as a template and a mask to stamp some words into this heart shape. I just marked the center of my page so that I could make sure that heart was centered, and then I used some purple removable tape from iCraft to temporarily adhere my heart template into place. Next, I'm going to be using this same small alphabet stamp from Ali Edwards to stamp some words into this heart shape. And I just picked some short words that were relevant to my journaling on the other page. You'll notice that as I'm stamping, I'm making sure to overlap my letters a bit with the edge of the heart template. And I find that cutting off the letters around the edges of whatever template you're using just helps to define that edge a bit more so that you end up with something that actually looks like a heart shape and not just some words that are stamped randomly on the page. And I'm just trying my best to alternate between the 4 colors of dye inks that I had picked for this spread. Once I'm finished stamping all the words, you'll see when I pull back this template that the heart doesn't look extremely defined right now, and that's because I have all these blank spaces in between the words and at the end of the words where the edge isn't really well defined. So I'm just taking this small period stamp, I think it's a period stamp, in the stamp set, and I'm just going to stamp a bunch of dots randomly throughout this heart, making sure that some of them do overlap with the edge of the heart template, and that gives my heart a bit more definition. Once I was satisfied with my stamping, I just added a few embellishments from the Hearts scrapbooking kit off screen. I pulled in a couple of neutral colored felt hearts onto the left side of this page, just to tone down a bit of that colorful stamping, and I also added a pink chipboard heart right next to my title. Before I move on to my demo on layering and combining fonts, I just wanted to share the binder I have for all of my ink swatches, because this really helps me decide what types of colors I want to use. Like, for example, if I'm combining two different fonts and I want them to be two different ink colors. My favorite dye inks by far are the mini ink cubes from Altenew, and they come in color families of 4 colors, going from the lightest to the darkest. So the lightest on top and the darkest on the bottom here. So an easy way to decide which 2 inks you might want for your 2 fonts is to pick a lighter color and a darker color from the same color family. Another thing I like to do is maybe pick like a lighter color from one ink family and a darker color from a different ink family that's close by. And doing these ink swatches makes it really easy for me to look for different color combinations between all of my inks. So here I've created a little cheat sheet that I like to use when layering and combining fonts. And the biggest tip that I have is to look for opportunities for contrast. We talked a bit about using a smaller font with a larger font in the first layout that I made, but here are some other things to consider when you're looking for 2 alphabet stamps to be used together, and I'll be showing a few examples that I stamped out using these principles. In this first example, I'm using this large outline alphabet from Citrus Twist Kits called Spencer Outline, as well as this smaller alphabet also from Citrus Twist Kits called Sophie. The inks that I'm using are going to be Starlight and Turquoise, and these do come from the same family. And you'll notice that with this combination, I'm creating a contrast between the tall alphabet and the short alphabet. I'm using a serif font, which is the Sophie alphabet, and a sans serif font, which is the Spencer alphabet. I'm using a dark ink to contrast with the light ink. And I'm also using one alphabet that's an outline alpha and another that's filled in. So I'm creating contrast in 4 different ways. You'll also notice that I stamped the word summer directly in the middle and in the darker ink. So your eyes are drawn to that word first, so you're more likely to read this title as summer vibes rather than the opposite way around. Next up, I'm using the Ali Edwards Storytelling Basics stamp in Ali's handwriting, as well as the Kelly Purkey Orchard alphabet stamp set, which is the more scripty looking font. The inks I'm using for this demo are Pumpkin Pie and Paper Bag, and these 2 inks are not from the same color family, but they are next to each other in rainbow order in my binder. With these stamps, I'm again creating a contrast between the tall alphabet and the short alphabet, as well as a dark ink to contrast with the light ink, but this time both of them are sans serif, and instead I'm creating contrast using one font that's all capital letters and one font that's all lowercase letters. And even though these fonts are both more of like a handwritten font instead of like a typed out font, the Ali Edwards one is kind of like a printed style, and the Kelly Purkey one is more scripty, so that provides contrast as well. And you'll notice that I chose to stamp the word spice a bit lower on my card so that your eyes are more likely to be drawn to the word pumpkin first, so that the title is more likely to be read as pumpkin spice rather than spice pumpkin. In this next example, I'm using the Ali Edwards December Daily alphabet from last year, which is that large block alphabet, as well as one of the small scripty alphabets in this Hero Arts Small Variety Alpha stamp set. And the inks that I'm using are Misty Morning and Nimbus, and these are again colors from one of the same Altenew color families. With these 2 alphabet stamp sets, you'll notice a contrast between the large and the small alphabets, the wide and the narrow alphabets, the all caps versus the lowercase alphabets, scripty versus typed, and the dark versus the light inks. And all of these different ways provide some contrast when I'm stamping this title. I was doing some test stamping for December Daily, and I thought I'd share this example with you as well. This is using a larger number stamp set from Ellie Edwards, as well as the Storytelling Basics alphabet that's a bit wider. And I decided to use two different ink colors for my numbers to give it that Christmassy vibe. These are Heartbeat and Hunter Green. And I'm going to be doing some heat embossing in gold for the alphabets. Before I did my heat embossing, I just wanted to make sure that my ink was dried, so I just sprinkled some embossing powder onto that piece of cardstock to see if any of it stuck onto my stamping, and it did, so I had to give it a bit of time to dry completely before moving on. So here you'll see that the embossing powder is no longer sticking to the areas where I had stamped the numbers, which means it's completely dry and ready to go. So I'm just taking my anti-static powder tool and swiping that all over my cardstock. I just find this helps cut down on any stray embossing powders that might stick to the areas where your fingers might have touched the page. And I'm using my Versamark ink pad with the Ellie Edwards Storytelling Basics alphabet stamp set to stamp out the phrase December Daily. Once that's done, I'm just sprinkling some gold embossing powder all over this card, and it'll stay on the spots where I've stamped with the Versamark ink. Now I'm just heating this up with a heat gun until the powder is all melted and nice and shiny. And you'll see that with that last example, I've created some contrasts with tall versus short, wide versus skinny, serif versus sans serif, and heat embossing versus just plain colored ink. In my next spread, I'm going to be sharing another way to use alphabet stamps, which is to stamp around objects, as well as showing an example for layering alphabet stamps together. I'm going to be creating a fold-out for this spread, so I've cut one piece of cardstock to the same size as a Life Crafted album page protector, and the other piece of cardstock to 9 inches wide, and I just scored this at 4 inches to create the fold-out. I also have some journaling that I've typed up on some clear sticker paper. For the right side of this page, I've printed out 3 photos in circle shapes that are 2 inches in diameter, just using this circle punch from EK Success to punch those out. And I'm going to use one of these circle dies from Spellbinders to cut out some pattern paper circles from Fancy Pants Peachy Keen collection to go behind each of these photos. And these circles are what I'm going to be stamping my alphabets around. So just adhering everything down with some Tombow Mono permanent adhesive tape runner, and then I can start with my stamping. I'm going to be stamping out the phrases the people, the sights, and the sounds around these 3 photos, and I'm going to stamp the words people, sights, and sounds in the Sophie alphabet stamp set from Citrus Twist, and the word the for each of these phrases in a smaller alphabet from Citrus Twist kits. And this smaller alphabet stamp set is an older one that's been retired from the store. You'll notice that I'm using the same ink color for both these fonts. This is the caramel toffee color, but I'm creating some contrast by using a lowercase font versus an uppercase font, large versus small, and bold versus not bolded. I'm going to be adding some more embellishments to this right page later on, but first I'm going to work on the left side of my spread. My plan is to have this large 5-inch by 8¼ inch portrait-oriented photo cover up the outside of this flip out and reveal an 8-inch by 4½ inch landscape-oriented photo on the inside, as well as my journaling and the title of this hike. So I cut my photo down at 4 inches so that I can span across this fold-out page. To indicate that there is a fold-out on this page, I'm going to use one of these labeled die cut pieces from Citrus Twist kits. This is from the Here We Go ephemera pack from August 2021, and I'm just going to cut this down in half lengthwise and sandwich this between the photo and the cardstock base, and that will create a tab to indicate where the fold-out is. While I was digging for that labeled die cut piece, I also found these number circles from the same ephemera pack, and I'm going to use these to help decorate the right side of my layout since I coincidentally have 3 circle photos and there are 3 circle numbers in this pack. I'm working on the inside of my fold out next, just trimming down this landscape photo so that it can fit across the fold out. I did have to cut it in half so that my page can still fold properly. I find that if I try to fold the paper, the photo paper itself, it doesn't crease very well, and also it adds a bit of bulk to the inside of the page, and then it doesn't fold down as nicely. just adhering my large photo down as well as the clear sticker paper with my journaling. To stamp out the name of the hike that we did, I'm going to use the same alphabet stamps as the ones that I used to stamp out this Summer Vibes card. I just really like how those look together, and I like that I had also used that same Sophie alphabet stamp set on the right side of that page as well, so it just ties the two pages together really nicely. For the inks, I'm using Caramel Toffee for the lighter color and Fire Brick for the darker color. And I just wanted to make sure that my two pages had a nice balance of orange tones and blue tones, especially with the orange pattern papers and the blue pattern papers, as well as the blues in my photos. And as I'm stamping, you'll notice that the word Hoffman is really off-centered on this page, so I decided to fix that by stamping a small arrow to fill in that small gap on the left side. And that arrow stamp was from the Good Time Adventure stamp set, also from Citrus Twist Kits. Just burnishing down my clear sticker paper, and I added some more embellishments to this page off screen as well, and that finishes up my spread. I hope you enjoyed these tips and tricks for using alphabet stamps, and I would love to see what you create with alphabet stamps as well. If you decide to try any of the techniques shown in this video or any of the techniques shown in Andrea or Diane or Jacqie's videos, or if you have a favorite way to use alphabet stamps of your own that you would like to share with us, I would love for you to post your projects on Instagram and make sure to tag us using the hashtag #SYSScrapbooking. And if you have a particular type of stamp that you'd like to see featured in a future video, feel free to let me know as well, and I will add that to my list for future stamp categories. I'm also always looking for new guest collaborators, so if you like using stamps on your scrapbook pages and would be interested in sharing a process video for a future month, feel free to get in touch. My Stretch Your Stamps scrapbooking videos will be posted on the second Saturday of every month, so make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel to get notified when those are uploaded, and check back every month for new techniques featuring different types of stamps with different guest collaborators. Thanks so much for watching, and happy stamping!